Man, I love a good RPG, but don't you hate sometimes how much brain power you have to devote to the mechanics of a game? It's just crazy! Hey, thanks! Hey friends, I'm Pragmatik and I like to talk about video games. But you know, sometimes I don't like talking about all the complicated menu systems and RPG mechanics just to get you invested in a game. I mean, I'm still kinda recovering from Eager Union and that was like a year ago. But there are certain games like Threads of Fate that'll show you the definition of bare bones, and why that may not be such a bad thing. I know I've said before on this channel that I love when Square Enix, or rather at the time, Squaresoft, would sometimes come out of the safety of their Final Fantasy cocoon and really try something new. And Threads of Fate is a really good example of this, deviating from the turn-based combat system and well thought out menu mechanics for something a little more action-oriented and way more easy to handle. Threads of Fate, or Do Prism as it's known in Japan, was one of the many PlayStation 1 era of games that Squaresoft produced. This was a time when Squaresoft was really trying to spread their wings and just see what they could make. And because of this, we got games like Xenogears, Einhander, and of course, Threads of Fate. It was truly a great time to be a fan of Square and RPGs in general, and while not the most mind-blowing game out there, I really think that Threads of Fate has a charm all its own. Threads of Fate follows the story of two playable characters. The resolute boy character Rue, whose ability to change into the monsters he encounters is as mysterious as his past. And the bratty hellbent character Mint, who hones herself with all sorts of elemental magic as she seeks out the one thing any budding princess wants: world domination. I think Rue and Mint are two very likable characters from the get-go. You come to admire Rue's determination to save someone he cares about by bringing them back from the grips of death. His stoic and bold nature coupled with his uncertainty and sometimes gullible tendencies get him into a whole mess of adventures. This is further amplified when his destiny is intertwined with Mint. He also wields the largest pizza cutter I've ever seen, only beating the protagonist from Tactics A2 by a little bit. Mint, on the other hand, is a complete tonal shift from Rue. Bratty overconfidence mixed with impatience only spells out disaster, but luckily, and to our comedic relief, the disasters she causes are mostly self-inflicted, and it's all in such a way that you can't help but kind of love her. When it counts, she can perform acts of selflessness and kindness that makes her feel like she has true moments of development, fleeting as they may be. Both our characters can only achieve their goals by seeking out an ancient artifact only known to people as the Relic, a mysterious object known to have been created by ancient beings known as Aeons. Finding the relic is said to grant the user any wish they would desire. You'll be playing two campaigns that focus on either Rue or Mint, undertaking either one to see how their story unfolds, as well as seeing how it goes parallel to the character you didn't choose, all leading up to the finale. Objectively, I don't think it matters which character you start with, but I think I had a bit more fun with Mint than with Rue. But honestly, there are snags for both characters that we'll get into in a bit. Playing as Mint has you going through stage after stage, learning new elemental abilities as well as different types of magic patterns your moves can attack in. Playing through the story will naturally see Mint getting her different abilities, but even more extra styles and abilities may require a bit of exploration in each stage, which shouldn't be a problem for two reasons. One, you can replay any stage over and over again to find things you may have missed, and two, this game is pretty easy, so don't expect a lot of critical thinking to find what you're looking for. There will be times when Mint has to use a certain element from her magic pool to get through an obstacle, but this is very rarely, and it doesn't hurt that most of these puzzles are pretty RPG standard, meaning it won't take you very long to figure out what you need to do. What I think I prefer more about Mint is her variety of magic styles, using ice, wind, fire, and other elements to let her tackle foes in different ways. That said, there is one thing that kind of plagues both characters. They both have melee attacks, and more often than not, this will be your solution to a problem. While Mint typically does a little less damage than Rue when attacking physically, Most enemies and even bosses don't require a lot of power to take down. Honestly, the fact that Mint does less damage gives her a bit of a challenge, which to me makes her a little more fun to play as. Her range of magic also makes the fights feel a little more fresh. Mint is largely the embodiment of comic relief, and it is the little moments of her actions backfiring on her that really make her an enjoyable character. Plus you get to enjoy the antics of the Stomping Magician looting items from either Rue or her rival Bella whenever they fall unconscious in certain scenarios. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but it is pretty funny to see her take a coin from Rue before making sure he's actually okay. Speaking of coins, be sure to be on the lookout for them as they are your lifeblood in battle. On the rare occasion that you are beaten in battle, you can pay either a bronze, silver, or gold coin to jump back into the fight. Which coin you use will see you coming back with a third, half, or full magic. While that may sound rough, especially for Mint, remember this simple fact. This game is easy. You may not even find yourself losing much, if at all, during your playthrough. And if you think jumping back in with less magic than you had to start with is going to make it harder, well, forget that, because in Threads of Fate, you don't have to rely on things like potions or ethers. The simple way to gain magic back is to simply hit an enemy. No, seriously, that's it. You won't even notice your magic meter unless you're going all out constantly with higher cost spells. Rue isn't without variety of his own, but it comes in the form of an extension of his melee abilities. After defeating an enemy, Rue will be able to shift into that monster he's just defeated. He can carry a few monster forms with him, but the oldest one will eventually be phased out for a new one. Like Mint, there are only a few times you'd actually need to use these forms to get to a certain destination, or for one of the few secrets a level might contain. Rue's magic use stems from using the monster's own ability rather than transforming into them. This also allows for quite the variety of moves for Rue, but aside from overcoming an obstacle or the occasional platforming puzzle, I never found myself needing or even wanting to use his other forms. They offer little more than Rue can already do himself, and this goes double for fighting bosses. Each monster carries their own speed and weight alongside how they perform their moves, and none of them really size up to Rue's firm and effective fighting style. This definitely doesn't make Rue any less fun to use though. It's really up to the player's discretion on how they want to tackle stages, but I was rather pleased with how well his combo of moves played out for most situations. With that, Rue was a joy to progress the story with. Slowly uncovering his past as well as seeing the friends he makes along the way makes everything worth it. Even the platforming, which we'll get to, trust me. Rue's kindness towards others really helps him develop in a way that he wants to, in a way that makes him feel human, even in opposition to those that might try and make him feel that what he wants is wrong. It showcases an internal struggle that really bubbles to the surface once you approach the end of the game. Threads of Fate may be one of the most simplistic RPGs I've ever played from Square's library. Add on to that, maybe even RPGs in general. But for that reason alone, I absolutely love it. If I haven't driven in the idea that this game is simple enough times, well, here's some more examples. Your menu does its very best to give you as little detail as possible. You're given your stats, which is only strength and defense, which is added by base stats coupled with what you're equipped with. You have a menu that shows your tokens that you get from beating monsters that can be exchanged for money to buy things. Not many things, mind you, mostly just extra armor and gloves to enhance your aforementioned stats, and maybe a way to buy some magic recovery before heading back out. And the last slot shows you your inventory, which mostly consists of quest items and various stones, which are also largely used to sell for money. Some items you find can be given to certain residents of the town you stay in to be exchanged for some sort of service, like a decrease in paying for stat upgrades or donating it to a church for some additional coins to resurrect you in battle. Obtaining these items are mostly done through exploring the stages. Beyond this, there is no more complexity to this game. The story's progression even goes as far as going to this family that is also looking for the relic. Talking to Dr. Klaus here, he's basically a walking billboard telling you where to go next. The biggest challenge you'll face from this game is conquering its simple platforming. And it's not that the platforming is challenging, it's just bad. There are a few segments where you'll have to time your jumps perfectly, and the game's movement can just be the biggest hindrance to you. Especially this part in this cave. It's just this mix of your jumps being really tight, but also making you slide off if you hold down your D-pad too long. It's not often, but you'll remember the segments for a long time after you've done them, and not because they were fun. Simplicity is also a big foundation in terms of combat. While you do have these abilities and your melee attacks, both of them come off rather plain and simple. Mint's variety of magic does mostly result in her just spamming the same attack, and both of their melees come in the form of a 3-hit combo. You could argue that Rue has a bit more to do with his multitude of monster attacks, but this once again calls back to even wanting to use them in the first place. The combat doesn't demand a lot of you, so the variety kind of feels hollow. The story itself is very linear. While you do have the choice to journey back to other areas, you'll seldom need to do so because these places rarely offer you any change. Save maybe for the few times that you comedically beat up these 2-bit thugs that never change up their tactics. The progression is as linear as it comes, and you'll find yourself blowing towards the end in no time, with only the occasional rare item to find or spell to acquire to stop you. Even the area you navigate is pretty simple. You can venture to any monster-filled areas you've been to before, but this isn't going from town to town. Rather, you have one town that acts as your central hub that both Mint and Rue populate. From here, you do everything from shopping for new items, to finding out where to go next, to finally choosing your next destination. I'd argue that it's at least nice to have new people and dialogue every time you come back to the central hub. If you want a deeply immersive menu system to really diversify your characters and make them feel like a design all your own, then, well, Threads of Fate is not going to be the game for you. There is just something about Threads of Fate I can't help but love. I like the mindless satisfaction of slamming through enemies and working through the bosses one after another. Each boss you get to feels like another pleasant chapter to a book you can't put down. And in a weird way, it's how quick and simple this game is that made me really want to take my time with it. It's the interactions with the small cast of characters that really bring out its charm. While Mint and Rue are great characters on their own, it's the small group of people they interact with that make Threads of Fate all the better. From the family both characters work with in finding the relic, to the comically bad antagonists Belle and Duke that honestly made me actually laugh out loud a few times when you get mixed up with them. Fancy Mel is a resounding voice of reason in the game that makes our protagonists question their motives, and there is the ever cool Rod that will challenge you to a fight one moment, and then offer you his help in any way he can the next. Plus, if you beat the out of him, he gives you money. The art style has a nice clash of colors as well. From deep greens of the forest to the pastel colors of Fancy Mel's house, that is honestly one of my favorite places in the game. It's like each area has a dedicated color tone as well as a different style mixed into it, where no level feels too similar to the last one. Not to mention the fact that each song that accompanies the level is just so good. Famed composer Junya Nakono, known for his works on Musashi, Samurai Legend, Front Mission, Gun Hazard, and co-composing Final Fantasy X, made Threads of Fate a soundtrack all his own, really working the synths and the catchy percussion to his needs to make for a vibrant composition throughout the levels. The simplicity of Threads of Fate makes it feel like a quaint little adventure. It is just like reading a book with the occasional battle thrown into the mix. And when it's finally all over, you'll really miss it. I was honestly supposed to make this review months ago, but I kept booting this game up little by little, savoring it like a fine wine that I knew would soon be gone. It's honestly a game that I feel is more enjoyable when you're older, not only because it is something that can be played in small segments, but the overall simplicity of Threads of Fate feels refreshing in games that want you to complete 50 quests before moving on to the next section and grind for hours for the next shiny weapon. Threads of Fate takes simplicity as an art form and makes it work. It's not the best game, but to me, it's a great game. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching my review on Threads of Fate. Seriously, if you need an RPG just to chill out to, I highly recommend this one. Consider subscribing if you liked what you've seen, and leave a like if you liked the video. Have a great day, and keep it practical.